There's nothing much more important to us in Britain than our banknotes. Look, here's a nice, rather used fiver here. But the Bank of England today has announced a consultation into changing our old paper-based fivers into something more like this, a Canadian $20 bill. It's made of plastic. It feels quite plastic. It feels really rather different to the paper notes we know and love. So why is the Bank of England thinking of doing this? Well, there's a number of advantages, it says, in plastic, or polymer notes as it prefers to call them. First of all, if you put it through the washing machine, your fiver will be pretty much destroyed. This Canadian note will be pretty much unscathed. If you drop red wine all over it, this is pretty much useless. This is absolutely fine. But maybe the most significant issues are to do both with the cost of the notes. These are more expensive to produce, but they last much, much longer than paper-based notes. So in the long run, they cost a lot less. And then there's the security aspect of them. Forgery is much more difficult on these notes. They have clear segments. It's much easier to put security systems on it. The printing is more difficult on plastic than it is on paper. But it's not all good news. Plastic notes have one quite big drawback. When they're new, they tend to stick together. So you might hand over a $20 bill, Canadian bill. You've got to be handing over 2 or even 3. And if that was happening to our fivers and tenors, people would be extremely upset. So the Bank of England want to know what people think about the suggestion to have polymer notes. So they're operating a big consultation. Do people like the feel of them? You can't fold them in the same way you fold a paper note. And in the end, are they acceptable? Because the most important thing is that a banknote has to be trusted. So the Bank of England won't go ahead with plastic notes in Britain unless it's convinced that the public are going to find them acceptable. Now, the Bank of England isn't the first central bank to introduce plastic notes, as we could see here. The Bank of Canada has already done it. Mark Carney, the current Bank of England governor, has even signed this note, or there's at least an electronic signature on that. Australia introduced plastic notes in 1988, so they're really quite a used technology. But the Bank of England would be stealing a march on its two big brothers, the European Central Bank and the Federal Reserve in the US, which still use paper-based notes. And these central banks do like to compete with each other, so the Bank of England would quite like to be ahead of the game for once.